Dexter Morgan killed for over 2 decades on screen without ever being arrested. 46 blood slides in his first trophy box. 18 bodies pulled out of the Gulf Stream. And still, the show kept him free through 8 full seasons. But strip away the writers, the plot armor, and the conveniently timed deaths of every person who got close to the truth, and a very different picture starts to emerge. This breakdown is a hypothetical analysis of a fictional character tested against real-world investigative standard, purely for the sake of seeing how the code actually holds up once the writers stop protecting it. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how fast Dexter Morgan would actually end up caught, exposed, or dead in reality. Dexter's kill rooms were designed to look like sealed environments, but the real world of forensic trace evidence recovery would have turned even one of those rooms into a conviction. Across all 8 seasons, Dexter's kill room setup follows the same pattern. He wraps the space in plastic sheeting, often the same room more than once when he returns to a location like the cabin in Season 2 where Santos Jimenez was killed, or the shipping container where Maria LaGuerta died. He used his own car, his own boat, the slice of life, and his own hands to transport victims. He wears rubber gloves and an apron, but he reuses tools, returned to his apartment after kills, touches door handles, car interiors, and marina surfaces. In the Season 2 finale, when the FBI and police raided the Everglades cabin after Dokes died, the official ruling framed Dokes as the butcher, despite the fact that Dexter had been inside that cabin for extended periods, preparing and executing kills there. In the Season 7 premiere, Dexter killed Travis Marshall inside an abandoned church, staged it as a suicide, and left behind a single blood slide near the scene that Maria LaGuerta later recovered. One slide, from one kill, started a full reopening of the case. In the real world, trace evidence transfer is governed by Locard's exchange principle, the forensic standard that every contact between 2 surfaces leaves material behind. Hair, skin cells, fibers from clothing, shoe print residue, sweat, and touch DNA from gloved hands sliding against surfaces can all be recovered using standard crime scene processing. The FBI's own training manual describes touch DNA as recoverable from items a person handles for as little as a few seconds. Plastic sheeting does not prevent this, it traps it. A sealed environment is actually better for preserving trace materials because nothing disperses. When a kill room is eventually found, every surface becomes a library of the person who used it. Dexter's process worked in the show because the writers chose what the investigators would look at. In reality, the same sealed room that hides the kill from being seen also preserves every cell, every fiber, every microscopic transfer the killer left behind. The moment any of those rooms is discovered, and across the series multiple people found them, from Dokes to Lumen to Angela Bishop, a modern forensic team would be pulling DNA from the plastic, from the drain, from the table legs, from the tape used to secure the victim. So Dexter is at a disadvantage. The kill room is the single biggest forensic liability in the entire setup. One discovery by competent investigators ends the whole operation in days, not years. If you enjoy breakdowns like this, where we actually test what the show gave us against real-world conditions, hit that subscribe button now, because the next section shows exactly how Dexter's own workplace would have ended him faster than any outside investigator ever could. Working inside Miami Metro was shown as Dexter's greatest protection, but in real police departments, that same proximity is what ends careers and puts people in prison. Dexter's position as a blood spatter analyst gave him access to crime scene, evidence lockers, case files, and the movements of the detectives investigating the very murders he committed. In Season 2, when scuba divers discovered 18 dismembered bodies off the coast of Miami, Dexter responded by deleting marina security footage, sabotaging the air conditioning in the field moored to accelerate body decomposition, changing his disposal site to the Gulf Stream, and ultimately framing Sergeant James Dokes. His blood slide trophy box, which contained 46 slides, was found in the trunk of Dokes' car after Dexter planted it there. 18 of those slides were matched by DNA to the 18 recovered bodies. The remaining 28 were matched to missing felons and murder suspects. That is 46 confirmed kills sitting in evidence with the real killer's fingerprints all over the box. In real police departments, internal affair divisions, forensic audit trails, evidence custody of chain logs, and digital access records track every time a staff member touches case material. Modern crime labs use badge entry systems, timestamp database access logs, and internal surveillance. Case files know which analyst pulled which report and when. Any employee whose access pattern correlates with the geographic or temporal pattern of unsolved murders becomes a statistical outlier almost immediately. The Harold Shipman case in the United Kingdom, where a doctor killed over 200 patients, was ultimately broken open when investigators noticed a pattern in death certificates he signed, even though Shipman had no obvious motive and his victims appeared to die of natural causes. Dexter's access was shown as an advantage because the writers never let the department run a serious internal review on his movements. In reality, a blood spatter analyst whose personal boat was moved the same week bodies were dumped offshore, whose access log showed him pulling files on victims he had no casework connection to, and whose schedule correlated with gaps in departmental records, would be flagged by any competent internal audit. LaGuerta built exactly this kind of case in Season 7, using only the limited data she could access informally. A formal internal investigation with subpoenaed records and forensic accounting on his time would have built the same case faster and with far more evidence. So once again, another disadvantage for Dexter. The workplace was his weakness the entire time. Being inside the department meant every single kill left a digital shadow on his own employer's servers, and a real internal affairs unit would have identified the pattern long before 46 bodies had accumulated. The workplace problem is bad enough on its own, but the real nail in the coffin shows up the moment you look at what Dexter's digital life would have actually looked like outside the office. The show quietly ignored how much digital evidence every one of Dexter's kills would have generated in the real world, and that blind spot alone would have finished him. Dexter used his personal phone to call Target, research victims, and coordinate with Deborah. He drove his own vehicle to surveillance location. He used credit cards in the Miami area. In Dexter New Blood, set roughly a decade after Season 8, his entire 10-year cover as Jim Lindsay in Iron Lake was broken when his son Harrison located him through a single photo posted on Instagram. That one detail, already canon in the show, confirms how exposed his digital footprint always was. Earlier in the series, in Season 7, LaGuerta obtained judicial warrants to track the GPS data on Dexter and Deborah's phone on the night of Travis Marshall's murder, and the data showed both of them near the church at the time of the fire. Only her death stopped that warrant from becoming a full case against him. In real-world investigation, cell tower pings, GPS data from phones and vehicle, toll road record, ATM withdrawals, gas station purchases, and license plate reader networks create a continuous movement log for almost every adult in a developed country. When a body is found, investigators cross-reference devices that were in the area at the time of death. A person whose phone repeatedly appears near the last known locations of missing felons whose disappearances correlate with their own personal time off work, becomes a primary suspect on statistical grounds alone. The investigation into the BTK killer in Kansas finally closed decades after his first murders when he sent a floppy disk to police that contained metadata identifying the computer, the church he used it at, and the first name of the user. The show was built in a world where Dexter's phone never got pulled, his car was never subpoenaed, and his marina records were never matched against the disposal dates of his victim. In reality, any single one of those data sources would have linked him to multiple kills. Combined, they would have built an overwhelming circumstantial case before the first year was out. LaGuerta's GPS warrants in Season 7 were a glimpse of what a real investigator with real authority could accomplish, and she built that case in weeks, not years. So once again, another disadvantage for Dexter. The digital trail alone, untouched by the show for 8 seasons, would have made him a primary suspect within months of the first few kills being noticed as missing persons. What would one rule of the code you think would actually hold up under real forensic scrutiny? Drop your answer in the comments, because the next section shows where Dexter's own behavior would have finished him, even without any evidence we've already covered. Dexter's covered hell because the writers showed almost no one looking closely at him. In reality, modern behavioral profiling would have flagged his pattern long before LaGuerta ever found a blood slide. Dexter kills followed an almost identical ritual for 2 decades. Abduction using M99, transport to a prepared location, plastic sheeting, binding to a table, a small cut on the cheek for a blood slide, and dismemberment for disposal. He targeted exclusively murderers who had escaped justice, a victimology pattern so distinctive that FBI Special Agent Frank Lundy in Season 2 correctly profiled the Bay Harbor Butcher as someone with law enforcement access and an obsessive level of control over crime scenes. Within weeks of the investigation opening, Lundy narrowed his suspect pool to the Miami area individuals with police training. Dexter's name was on that shortlist. The only reason Lundy did not close in on him personally was that Dexter framed Dokes while Lundy was still working the profile. In the real world, FBI behavioral analysis unit agents and modern geographic profiling software, like the crime stat tool used by the US Department of Justice, can narrow a serial offender's likely residence or workplace to within a small radius based on body disposal patterns, abduction locations, and victim demographics. When victims share a specific characteristic, in Dexter's case, all of them being escaped murderers who had cases passed through the Miami-Dade justice system, the investigative pool narrows to people who would have access to that information. Court records, case files, defense attorney lists, and police database access logs produced a short list measured in dozen, not thousand. BTK, the Green River Killer, and the Golden State Killer were all eventually identified through patterns and databases that took decades only because those databases did not exist yet. Today, they do. The show solved this problem by killing Lundy off and having Dexter frame Dokes. In reality, a second FBI profiler assigned after Lundy would have continued the exact same narrowing process, and Dexter's name would have stayed on the list permanently. The victimology was too specific. Every one of his victims came from a Miami justice system he worked inside. A geographic profile of dump sites combined with his marina records, his work schedule, and his personal time off would have been sufficient for a warrant. So, once again, the disadvantage is Dexter's. His pattern was the single most identifiable victimology a real profiler could ask for. The writers gave him Lundy's death and Dokes' framing to survive it. Reality offers neither. Behavioral profiling was bad enough, but the final category is the one where Dexter's entire operation actually comes apart the fastest. Across all 8 seasons, plus New Blood, Dexter was seen, identified, or nearly caught by at least a dozen different people. In the show, most of those moments resolved in his favor. In reality, even one of them would have ended him. The list of people who either discovered Dexter's secret or got dangerously close is extensive. Dokes discovered the truth in season 2 and died in the cabin explosion. Lila West learned it from Dokes and was killed in Paris. Miguel Prado figured it out in season 3 and was killed. Arthur Mitchell, the Trinity Killer, identified Dexter as Kyle Butler and retaliated by killing his wife, Rita Morgan, who was found dead in a bathtub with their son Harrison sitting in her blood on the bathroom floor. Lumen Pierce learned the truth in season 5 and was allowed to live. Deborah discovered Dexter in the season 6 finale, killing Travis Marshall, and spent the following seasons complicit. LaGuerta found the blood slide, matched it to a Bay Harbor Butcher trophy using a private lab, obtained GPS warrants, and was killed by Deborah to protect Dexter. Hannah McKay knew. Oliver Saxon knew. In New Blood, Angela Bishop connected Iron Lake drug dealer injection marks to Bay Harbor Butcher victim files, pulled a titanium surgical screw from Matt Caldwell's burned body out of the ashes of Dexter's cabin, and arrested him. In Resurrection, Leon Prater bought the original blood slide box from a corrupt FBI agent, and Angel Batista continued his own investigation into Dexter's alias. In reality, witnesses who go missing near a suspect generate investigations of their own. Dokes disappearing off the grid while actively investigating Dexter would have been the first red flag. Miguel Prado, an assistant district attorney, being murdered while his brother Ramon was publicly accusing Dexter at the rehearsal dinner, would have triggered a full homicide inquiry centered on Dexter. Rita's murder in Dexter's own bathtub produced an FBI investigation in the show itself, where the Trinity Killer was the suspect. But in reality, the husband of a murder victim is always the first person looked at. Any one of these deaths, in isolation, would have been enough to bring Dexter into sustained questioning. The Angela Bishop case in New Blood is the clearest window into what reality looks like. One small-town police chief, working part-time on the case, connected needle marks on 2 local drug dealers to the Bay Harbor Butcher's method, found a titanium screw with a matchable serial number, and had Dexter in a cell within a couple of weeks. She did this with vastly less resources than any Miami homicide unit, FBI field office, or state investigative bureau had access to. If Angela could do it, a real Miami-Dade detective with full departmental resources and no personal relationship with the suspect could have done it 10 times faster. Once again, disadvantaged Dexter. The number of people who got dangerously close across the run of the show, and the sheer amount of luck the writers handed him to escape each one, confirms that in reality, he would have been caught inside the first small handful of kills. The code's survival depended on writers protecting him, not on the code working itself. Dexter Morgan was built by television writers to be the most optimized, fictional serial killer they could put on a screen. He had forensic access, departmental protection, a disciplined process, and a carefully maintained cover. And the show still had to hand him Lundy's unexplained departure, Dokes' framing, Lila burning the cabin, LaGuerta being shot by Deborah, Rita's death being pinned on Trinity, and eventually a faked suicide to keep him alive through 8 seasons. That is a lot of narrative protection for a supposedly watertight operation. In the real world, measured against current forensic standards, modern investigative tools, digital movement records, behavioral profiling, internal affair practices, and the sheer number of witnesses who identified him across the show's timeline, Dexter would almost certainly have been identified as a person of interest within the first year of his killing career and in custody within the first 2 or 3 years at the absolute outside. The first body discovered in the Gulf Stream with trace evidence on the plastic sheeting would have put a forensic team on a suspect pool of people with access to Miami crime scene material. The first victim, flagged as a missing escaped murderer, would have narrowed that pool even further. His marina security record, his vehicle toll data, and his cell tower pings would have built a timeline in weeks. And the single most damning fact is this: Angela Bishop, one small-town police chief with nothing but a hunch and a titanium screw, caught him in a matter of weeks with none of that technology deployed. The code of Harry was precise. It was disciplined. It produced clean kills in a fictional environment where the investigators could not see what the audience could see. Drop it into reality with working forensics and working police databases and working profiling tools, and it stops being a survival system and starts being a map directly back to the killer. Every category goes against Dexter: forensic tapes, workplace surveillance, digital footprint, behavioral profiling, and witness consequences all point in the same direction. The show kept him alive by giving him luck the real world does not hand out. A realistic estimate places Dexter Morgan in custody within 12 to 36 months of his first confirmed kill, likely less, given how distinctive his victimology was from the very beginning. The code survived because the writers protected it. Reality offers no such protection. If this breakdown made you rethink of how much Dexter's success came from the show versus the code itself, subscribe, hit the bell, and stick around because the next one goes even deeper into what the show quietly glossed over.